Did you know, on August 3rd, 1962, an Indian elephant by the name of Tusco was injected with 257 micrograms of lysergic acid dithalamide from researchers at the University of Oklahoma. Within 5 minutes, the elephant collapsed and was pronounced dead in under an hour and a half. Now, it's Kayleigh, guys, again, and today we're going to be talking about that one and only mellow yellow, LSD. So, what is LSD anyways? Lysergic acid dithalamide, more commonly known as LSD or acid, and formerly known as lysergide or LSD-25, is classified as a hallucinogenic drug. Now, acid, as a hallucinogen, can distort and disrupt an individual's sense of perception. And it can also affect things such as mood, body temperature, hunger, sexual behavior, muscle control, and general sensory perception. LSD is generally considered to be a non-addictive, non-toxic, semi-synthetic psychedelic drug. Now, it's usually synthesized by taking dithalamide and adding it to an activated form of lysergic acid. LSD was first synthesized by Swiss scientist Albert Hofmann on November the 18th of 1938. He was working on research using medicinal plant squill and ergot fungi, which by the way grows on rye, for pharmaceutical purposes at Sandoz Laboratories in Basel, Switzerland. But we'll get back to more of the history behind LSD here shortly. First, let's talk about some of the physical, psychological, and sensory effects that can happen while tripping out on acid. Now, a typical dose of acid is about the size of 1/10 of the mass of a grain of sand, which is about 100 to 500 micrograms. Even this very, very small amount can produce a myriad of effects to the individual taking it. Now, unfortunately, these effects are entirely unpredictable because it really depends on the individual's mentality and the environment around them. On the physical aspect of short-term effects of acid use, some commonly reported symptoms include fever, hypothermia, nausea, jaw clenching, sleeplessness, tremors, dry mouth, increased blood sugar levels, pupil dilation, general muscle weakness, and a myriad of other things. Now, it's hard to predict what physical reactions are going to occur during LSD use because generally they're nonspecific. Now, it's the variable psychological and sensory effects caused by taking LSD that are the true experience of a so-called trip. These can include, but are certainly not limited to, things like experiencing intensified colors, objects or walls that appear to ripple and breathe, general time distortion, geometric patterns crawling across stationary objects and walls, loss of the sense of self, your ego in general, or your entire identity, experiencing additional spatial and temporal dimensions, general sensory confusion or intensification, as well as morphing objects. The effects that we just talked about are short-term effects of taking acid. Now, some of the long-term effects of acid use that have been reported are more commonly things like flashbacks, general psychoses, schizophrenia, or severe depression in some cases. The effects that I just discussed happen because LSD affects the serotonin in your brain, much in the same way that SSRI antidepressants do. Now, an interesting fact is that there is such a thing as serotonin poisoning, which can happen, for instance, if you take too many antidepressants, which might cause you to hallucinate, as if you were on acid. So, now that we know what LSD is and what can be caused from its use, let's pinpoint some important events over the past 70 years or so since acid was first synthesized. 5 years after its initial discovery, LSD was revisited by its creator, Albert Hofmann. In fact, on April 16th of 1943, Hofmann experienced the first ever acid trip, now referred to as Bicycle Day. Basically, what happened was Hofmann ingested 250 micrograms of LSD, and after about an hour, decided that he was going to make the trip from the laboratory back to his house on his bicycle, followed by his lab assistant just to make sure that nothing really wrong happened. Hofmann had a myriad of experiences ranging from general panic attacks to thinking that his neighbor was a malevolent witch casting spells on him. And it wasn't until a house doctor came by later on that day and reassured Hofmann there was absolutely nothing physically wrong with him, that he began to experience the more positive effects of tripping out. In 1948, LSD was first introduced to the United States, and in fact, from the early 50s all the way up through the early 70s, the CIA conducted mind control experiments on the general public using LSD to see if they could control certain behaviors. LSD gained huge popularity through the 1960s counterculture movement for recreational use, for things like just opening your mind and trying to attain enlightenment. And it wasn't until 1968 that the government deemed LSD a Schedule I illegal drug. Even though recreational use of acid or possession of it altogether is illegal for the general public, LSD is still being used in medical research today. Join me in a future video when we'll get more in-depth into LSD psychiatric research and mind control as we talk about Project MKUltra. Thanks for joining me today on our discussion about LSD. Don't forget, leave me any comments that you'd like, rate my video, and subscribe. I'll see you guys later. Okay. Take two. Okay. Ah, you made me lose my train of thought. Don't take the brown ones. Okay. LSD gained much popularity through the 1960s counterculture movement for use as just a mind-opening experience. I don't know.